The massive fleet hung in space like a metal constellation. 800 warships from 12 different worlds all pointed toward one small blue planet far ahead. Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical display show every ship in perfect formation. This was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, and it was all aimed at crushing one tiny human colony that dared to say no to the Galactic Council. Vex had commanded fleets for 40 years, but nothing like this. His ship alone was 12 kilometers long, packed with enough weapons to crack a moon in half. The other vessels spread out around him carried the finest technology from dozens of worlds. Ultrian plasma cannons that could melt through any armor, Corvin shield generators that had never been broken, the Xian fighters that moved faster than light itself. Every species in the Council had sent their best ships and their most experienced crews for this mission. The target was simple enough. A human settlement on Haven Prime had refused to follow Council law. They would not pay the required taxes, would not accept Council inspectors, and would not acknowledge galactic authority over their world. The humans claimed they were independent, which was impossible. No species could exist outside Council control. The galaxy had been united for 3,000 years under one government, one law, one peace. These humans would learn that lesson today. Commander Rax, Vex second in command, approached with the latest intelligence reports. The humans on Haven Prime numbered about 2 million, mostly farmers and miners working the Outer Rim territories. Their technology was primitive by galactic standards. They had no major cities, no orbital defenses, no military installations worth mentioning. A few patrol boats at most, probably converted cargo ships with basic weapons bolted on. Nothing that could threaten even a single Council frigate, much less this armada. "Sir, we are receiving data from our advanced scouts," Rax said, his forearms working quickly across multiple control panels. "The human colony appears to be going about normal business. No evacuation, no defensive preparations, no distress calls to other human settlements. They either do not know we are coming or they do not understand what it means." Vex nodded, watching the star charts update on his main screen. Haven Prime sat alone at the edge of explored space, 3 days from the nearest Council outpost. It was the perfect place to make an example. When word spread that the mighty Council fleet had crushed a human rebellion in minutes, no other species would dare challenge galactic authority. The message would be clear: submit or be destroyed. The Galactic Council had been watching humanity for 50 years now, ever since first contact with their exploration ships. They were a young species, barely out of their home system when Council vessels found them. Their technology was crude, their politics chaotic, their military weak. Most Council members had voted to simply ignore them until they became more advanced, but recent events had forced a different approach. 3 human colonies had been established without Council permission. Their merchants were trading outside approved channels. Their exploration ships were mapping systems the Council had not yet claimed. Worst of all, they were spreading ideas about independence and self-governance that other Rim species were starting to adopt. The situation could not be allowed to continue. Admiral Vex had been chosen for this mission because of his reputation for quick, decisive victories. He had put down 12 rebellions in his career, usually without firing a shot. The sight of his flagship dropping out of hyperspace was enough to make most worlds surrender immediately. The Eternal Dominion was famous across the galaxy as an unstoppable force, a symbol of Council power that had never been defeated in battle. Time to arrival at Haven Prime? Vex asked, studying the tactical display that showed hundreds of green dots representing his fleet. 18 hours at current speed, sir, Rax replied. All ships report ready for combat operations. The Corvin heavy cruisers are requesting permission to take point position for the initial assault. Denied. We maintain current formation until we reach the system. I want the humans to see every ship, to understand exactly what they are facing. Fear is our most powerful weapon in situations like this. The bridge fell quiet except for the constant hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of monitoring systems. Vex walked to the massive viewing window that dominated the front wall, looking out at the star field ahead. Somewhere out there, 2 million humans were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their world was about to change forever. By tomorrow, they would be council citizens like everyone else, or they would be dead. The Admiral had done this so many times before. Small rebellions, independence movements, species that thought they could stand alone against the combined might of the galaxy. They all ended the same way. A few hours of fighting at most, usually much less. The rebels would see his fleet and realize their mistake. Surrender would follow quickly, along with trials for the leaders and integration for survivors. It was efficient, clean, and had kept the galaxy peaceful for millennia. But something felt different about this mission. The intelligence reports on humanity were confusing, full of contradictions that his analysts could not explain. Human merchant ships appeared at trading posts across the rim, but no one could track where they came from or where they went. Human exploration vessels had been spotted in dozens of systems, always alone, always avoiding contact with council patrols. For a species that was supposed to be primitive and weak, they seemed remarkably good at staying hidden. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Council Command," the communications officer announced from a station near the back of the bridge. "Put it through," Vex ordered, turning away from a window. The holographic display showed the familiar figure of Chancellor Crix, the Valerian politician who spoke for the entire Galactic Council. His scaled face looked serious as he delivered his message. "Admiral Vex, you are authorized to use whatever force is necessary to bring the human colony into compliance with Council law. However, the Council wishes to avoid unnecessary destruction if possible. These humans may be valuable as workers or soldiers once they are properly integrated into our society." "Understood, Chancellor," Vex replied. "We will offer terms before beginning bombardment. See that you do. The galaxy is watching this operation, Admiral. Make sure it sends the right message to any other species considering rebellion." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence again. Vex returned to studying his tactical displays, noting the positions of each ship in his fleet. The Altrian dreadnoughts formed the core of his formation, their massive hulls bristling with weapons that could level cities. The Corvin cruisers provided shield support and electronic warfare capabilities. The Dachien fighters were ready to swarm any defensive positions the humans might have prepared. 18 hours. In 18 hours, this would all be over. The human colony would surrender or be destroyed, and the galaxy would remain united under Council rule. Vex had no doubt about the outcome. He had seen too many rebellions, fought too many battles, commanded too many victories to believe that a handful of primitive humans could pose any real threat to his fleet. The stars ahead looked peaceful in the darkness of space, giving no hint of what was coming. Haven Prime was just another of light among thousands, unremarkable except for the defiant humans who called it home. Soon, very soon, Admiral Vex would show them the price of challenging the most powerful military force in galactic history. His fleet moved forward through the void, 800 ships carrying enough firepower to sterilize worlds. The greatest armada ever assembled was closing in on a small human colony that had dared to dream of independence. What could possibly go wrong? The Council fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Haven system, like a wave of metal death, spreading across the star field. 800 warships materialized in perfect formation, their combined mass creating gravitational distortions that rippled through local space. Admiral Vex felt the familiar satisfaction of a well-executed fleet maneuver as his tactical officers began their scans of the inner system. Full sensor sweep initiated. Commander Rax reported from a station, detecting the human colony on the third planet as expected. Population centers match our intelligence estimates. No orbital platforms, no defensive satellites, no military installations of significant size. Vex nodded, studying the holographic display that showed Haven Prime as a small blue-green world orbiting peacefully around its yellow star. The planet looked exactly like the intelligence reports had described, a simple agricultural colony with a few small cities and mining operations. Nothing that could threaten even a single Council frigate, much less the largest armada in galactic history. What about their space assets? Vex asked. Any ships in system? Rax worked his controls for several seconds before responding. Sir, We are detecting one vessel in high orbit around the colony world. It appears to be unusual. The word unusual made Vex look up from his command chair. In 40 years of military service, he had learned that unusual things in space were often dangerous things. Specify. The ship is approximately 800 meters in length, much smaller than our intelligence-suggested human vessels typically are. Its design does not match any known configuration in our databases. The hull appears to be constructed from materials we cannot identify through long-range sensors. Vex walked over to Rax's station to see the sensor readings himself. The human ship showed up on the display as a sleek, elongated shape that looked nothing like the bulky cargo vessels and converted patrol boats the Council had encountered before. Where most ships were angular and utilitarian, this one curved and flowed like it had been grown rather than built. Energy signature? Vex asked. That is the unusual part, sir. The ship is generating power readings that seem impossible for its size. Our sensors indicate energy output equivalent to a heavy cruiser, but there are no visible power plants, no engine signatures, no weapon emplacements. According to our scans, the vessel should not be able to function. Vex frowned, studying the data. Something was wrong with these readings. Either the human ship was using technology the Council had never encountered, or their sensors were malfunctioning. He decided to assume the latter until proven otherwise. Could be some kind of stealth system, he said, or sensor jamming. Open hailing frequencies. Let's talk to these humans and get this over with. The communications officer worked his controls, establishing contact with the lone human vessel. After a few seconds, a calm voice responded in perfectly clear galactic standard language. Council Fleet, this is the UHV Defiance. You are in violation of sovereign territory. You have 60 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures. Silence fell across the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. Vex stared at the communication panel. Certain he had misheard. A single human ship, barely 800 meters long, was ordering his entire fleet to retreat. The absurdity of it was beyond comprehension. Laughter began spreading across the bridge as the alien crew members realized what they had just heard. The Corvin tactical officer was clicking his mandibles in amusement. The Vishen navigator was making the chittering sound his species used for humor. Even Commander Rax seemed to be fighting back a smile. Did that human just threaten us? The weapons officer asked, still chuckling. Apparently so, Vex replied, shaking his head. Run a detailed scan of their vessel. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. The sensor technicians worked quickly, focusing every scan in the fleet on the tiny human ship. The results were even more confusing than before. The vessel showed no weapon signatures whatsoever. No missile tubes, no energy cannons, no particle beam projectors. Its shields, if it had any, were not registering on any known frequency. For all practical purposes, it appeared to be completely defenseless. Sir, tactical analysis is complete, Rax reported. The human vessel poses no measurable threat to our forces. It appears to be an unarmed courier ship or possibly a research vessel. We could destroy it with a single fighter craft. Vex nodded, but something still bothered him about the whole situation. Why would the humans send a single unarmed ship to face his entire fleet? It made no strategic sense. Either they were completely insane, or they knew something he did not. Open a fleet-wide channel, he ordered. I want every ship in the Armada to hear this. When the communications officer confirmed all vessels were listening, Vex began his response to the human ship. His words would be recorded and transmitted across the galaxy as proof of Council power and human foolishness. Human vessel Defiance. This is Admiral Vex of the Galactic Council Fleet. You are outnumbered 800 to 1 by the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Your ship appears to be unarmed and defenseless. I am ordering you to surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your immediate destruction. The response came back instantly, delivered in the same calm tone as before. Admiral Vex, your vessels are in violation of sovereign space and are considered hostile. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal or defensive measures will be initiated. This time nobody on the bridge was laughing. The human was either completely mad or completely confident, and Vex was beginning to suspect it might be the latter. He decided to demonstrate exactly what the human ship was facing. All vessels, power weapons, and target the human ship. Lock targeting computers, but do not fire without my direct order. 800 warships obeyed simultaneously, their weapon systems coming online with enough combined firepower to reduce a small moon to vapor. Energy cascades rippled across the fleet as massive guns swiveled toward the tiny human vessel. The display was magnificent and terrifying, a demonstration of raw power that had never failed to convince rebellious species to surrender. The human ship sat motionless in space, apparently unimpressed by the greatest show of force in galactic history. No evasive maneuvers, no attempts to flee, no frantic communications requesting mercy. It simply waited, as if 800 hostile warships were no more threatening than a swarm of insects. 30 seconds have elapsed, the human voice announced. Council fleet, you are now designated as hostile forces, engaging defensive protocols. Vex watched his tactical display, expecting to see the human ship finally attempt to escape. Instead, something impossible happened. The vessel simply vanished from his sensors for a split second, then reappeared in exactly the same position. But the energy readings had changed dramatically. Sir, the human ship just experienced some kind of power surge, Rax reported, his voice showing the first signs of concern. Energy output has increased by 300%, but we still cannot determine the source. Weapon status? Vex asked. Still no detectable weapons, sir. But something is definitely different about that ship now. Vex stared at the tactical display, trying to understand what he was seeing. The human vessel had not moved, had not fired, had not done anything visible. Yet every instinct developed over 4 decades of combat was screaming at him that something fundamental had changed. The tiny ship that had seemed harmless moments before now felt dangerous in a way he could not explain. Sir, incoming transmission from the human vessel, the communications officer reported. Put it through. The same calm voice filled the bridge again, but now there seemed to be an undertone of finality in the words that made Vex's skin crawl. Admiral Vex, this is your final warning. Remove your fleet from this system immediately or face the consequences. We do not wish to harm you, but we will defend our territory by any means necessary. Vex had heard enough. Whatever technology the humans were using, whatever tricks they thought they could play, it was time to end this farce. No single ship could threaten his armada, regardless of how strange their power readings might be. All ships, open fire, he commanded. Destroy that vessel. 800 warships fired at once, filling space with enough destructive energy to sterilize entire worlds. Plasma beams, particle cannons, missile swarms, and exotic energy weapons all converged on the position of the human ship. The combined firepower, the greatest fleet in galactic history, focused on one tiny target that had dared to defy the Council. But when the energy dissipated and the sensors cleared, the human ship was still there, completely undamaged, sitting in exactly the same position as before. Not even a scratch marked its hull. Impossible, Rax whispered, staring at his instruments. Nothing could survive that bombardment. Admiral Vex felt cold fear creeping up his spine as he realized he was facing something far beyond his understanding. The human ship had not dodged their attack or deflected it with shields. It had simply ignored the most devastating barrage in galactic history, as if it were nothing more than a gentle breeze. The human voice came over communications again, still perfectly calm despite what had just happened. Threat confirmed. Initiating active defense measures. All Council personnel are advised to abandon ship immediately. Vex opened his mouth to give orders, to rally his fleet, to do something that might save them from whatever was about to happen. But before he could speak, his tactical display lit up with an alarm that would haunt his nightmares for the rest of his life. The human ship was moving. The human ship moved like nothing Admiral Vex had ever seen in 4 decades of space combat. One moment the Defiance was sitting motionless in orbit around Haven Prime. The next it was accelerating at impossible speeds without any visible propulsion system. No engine flare, no thruster signatures, no gravitational distortions that should accompany such movement. The vessel simply decided to be somewhere else and arrived there instantly. Vex watched his tactical display in growing horror as the human ship approached his fleet at velocities that should have torn any known vessel apart. The laws of physics demanded that nothing could accelerate that quickly without crushing its crew or ripping itself to pieces. Yet the sleek alien craft moved through space as if inertia and momentum were merely suggestions it chose to ignore. Evasive maneuvers! Vex shouted to his bridge crew. All ships scatter formation. 800 warships began turning away from the approaching threat, their massive hulls slowly changing direction as their crews fought to avoid whatever the human vessel intended to do. But they were too slow, far too slow. Ships designed for devastating firepower and heavy armor were not built for quick maneuvers, and the human craft was closing the distance at speeds that made evasive action meaningless. Commander Rax stood frozen at his tactical station, watching sensor readings that his mind refused to accept. "Sir, the human vessel is approaching our position at 0.7 light speed. That should be impossible in normal space." "I can see what it is doing," Vex snapped. "Tell me how to stop it." "I do not know, sir. Their ship appears to be violating several fundamental laws of physics. Our computers cannot predict its movement patterns because they do not follow any known principles of space travel." The Defiance reached the outer edge of the Council formation, and something happened that would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. The human ship did not fire weapons or launch missiles or deploy any recognizable form of attack. It simply passed through the exact position occupied by the Corvin heavy cruiser Stellar Pride, and where 1,200 meters of advanced warship had existed moments before, only empty space remained. No explosion marked the cruiser's destruction. No debris field scattered across the void. No energy discharge lit up the darkness. The Stellar Pride simply ceased to exist as if it had never been built, taking its crew of 4,000 souls into whatever realm lay beyond reality. The human vessel emerged on the other side completely unchanged, already lining up its approach to the next target. What happened to the Stellar Pride? Vex demanded, staring at his tactical display, where the cruiser's signature had vanished without explanation. "Unknown, sir," Rax replied, his voice shaking. "The ship was there, then the human vessel passed through its position, and now it is gone. Our sensors show no trace of wreckage or survivors." Panic began spreading through the Council fleet as other captains realized what they had witnessed. Frantic communications filled all frequencies as ship commanders tried to understand how an enemy vessel could destroy a heavy cruiser without firing a shot. Some reported weapon malfunctions, others called for immediate retreat, and a few demanded reinforcements as if more ships could somehow solve this impossible problem. The Defiance ignored the chaos it had created and continued its methodical approach toward Admiral Vex's flagship. The human ship moved in ways that defied every tactical manual ever written, appearing to exist in multiple positions simultaneously before consolidating into devastating attack runs. It would phase out of normal space-time for seconds at a time, then rematerialize directly in the path of another Council vessel. The Alterian dreadnought Hammer of Justice tried to ram the approaching human ship, its captain apparently deciding that conventional weapons were useless. Perhaps brute force might succeed. The massive warship accelerated toward the Defiance at maximum speed, its 5-kilometer hull bristling with enough armor to shrug off planet-killing impacts. For a moment, it seemed like the collision might work. Two ships occupying the same space in a contest of pure mass and momentum. Instead, the Hammer of Justice simply disappeared the instant it made contact with the human vessel. Another massive warship gone without trace. Another crew of thousands vanishing into whatever impossible technology the humans were using. The Defiance continued on its course as if nothing had happened, leaving empty space where one of the galaxy's most feared dreadnoughts had charged to its doom. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel's projected path," Vex ordered, desperation creeping into his voice. "If we cannot hit it directly, we will fill space with so much energy that it cannot avoid taking damage." The remaining ships of his fleet obeyed, pouring thousands of energy beams and missile volleys into the area where their computers predicted the Defiance would appear next. Space itself seemed to catch fire as the combined firepower of hundreds of warships created a killing field that nothing should have been able to survive. Plasma temperatures reached levels that could melt asteroids. Particle beams carved through the vacuum with enough power to crack planetary crusts. The human ship materialized in the center of the energy storm and passed through it completely unharmed. Whatever technology protected the Defiance from attack seemed to operate on principles that made conventional weapons meaningless. Energy beams passed through its hull without effect. Missiles detonated harmlessly against its shields, and particle streams simply bent around it as if space itself was protecting the vessel from harm. "Sir, we have lost contact with the Xian squadron," the communications officer reported. Last transmission indicated they were attempting to flank the human vessel. Vex looked at his tactical display and saw another dozen ship signatures simply gone from the readout. The Defiance had passed through there. Formation during one of its impossible acceleration bursts, and where 24 fast attack craft had been maneuvering moments before, only empty space remained. The human ship was systematically eliminating his fleet with clinical precision, taking no apparent pleasure in the destruction, but showing no mercy either. Minutes passed like hours as the Council Armada died ship by ship. The greatest military force in galactic history was being dismantled by a single vessel that seemed to exist outside the normal rules of reality. Captains who had never known defeat found themselves helpless against an enemy they could not understand, much less fight effectively. Some tried to flee, only to discover that the human ship could move faster than their escape attempts. Others attempted surrender, broadcasting on all frequencies that they yielded to superior force, but the Defiance ignored their pleas and continued its methodical elimination of threats. Commander Rax had taken over tactical coordination as ship after ship fell silent, their positions on the display changing from green to black as they ceased to exist. His 4 arms worked frantically across multiple control panels, trying to find some pattern in the human ship's movements, some weakness in its impossible defenses, some way to hurt the vessel that was destroying everything they had built. "Sir, I am reading massive spatial distortions around the human ship," he reported. "It appears to be manipulating space-time itself, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. That would explain how it can pass through solid matter and ignore our weapons. Can we disrupt it somehow?" Vex asked, watching his fleet counter drop below 500 ships for the first time in his career. "I do not know, sir. This technology is beyond anything in our databases. The humans appear to have discovered scientific principles that we did not even know existed." The Eternal Dominion shuddered as massive explosions erupted nearby, but not from enemy fire. Council ships were beginning to fire on each other in their panic, confusion, and desperation. Crews that had trained together for years were turning their weapons on friendly vessels, either by accident or in the mistaken belief that shape-shifting enemies had infiltrated their ranks. The human ship had not just destroyed their fleet, it had shattered their discipline and unity as well. "Sir, incoming transmission from a human vessel," the communications officer announced. "Put it through," Vex said, hoping against hope that the humans might be willing to negotiate. The same calm voice that had first warned them to leave filled the bridge again, but now it carried an undertone of sadness that made the Admiral's blood run cold. "Council forces, you have 30 seconds to abandon ship and evacuate in life pods. Any vessel that continues aggressive actions after that time will be eliminated. This is your final opportunity to preserve the lives of your crews." Vex stared at the communication panel, realizing that the human captain was offering mercy even after the Council fleet had come to destroy his world. The aliens had shown more compassion in victory than the Council had planned to show in theirs. But pride in 40 years of military conditioning would not let him surrender to a single enemy ship, no matter how impossible its capabilities might be. "All remaining vessels form defensive formation around the flagship," he ordered. "We will make our stand here." Less than 50 ships responded to his command. In the space of 4 minutes, the greatest armada in galactic history had been reduced to a handful of survivors clustering around their admiral's damaged flagship. The human ship hung motionless in space before them, waiting patiently for their decision like a predator that had already won, but preferred not to deliver the killing blow. Admiral Vex looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew, seeing fear and desperation where confidence had reigned just minutes before. The impossible had happened, and now he had to decide whether to lead his remaining people to certain death or admit defeat to an enemy he still did not understand. The Defiance moved again, and Admiral Vex knew his time for deciding had run out. The silence that followed the destruction of the Council fleet was more terrifying than the battle itself. Commander Rax found himself standing on the bridge of the observation ship Distant Echo, the only vessel in Admiral Vex's armada that had survived the encounter with the human ship. He was no longer a second in command, but the senior officer of what remained of the greatest military force in galactic history. And what remained was almost nothing. The Defiance hung motionless in space before them, its sleek hull showing no signs of damage despite having just eliminated 800 warships in 4 minutes. The human vessel had not bothered to destroy the Distant Echo, apparently deciding that a small observation craft posed no threat worth the effort of removing. Rax suspected the only reason he and his crew were still alive was because the humans wanted witnesses to what had happened here. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from a human vessel," the communications officer reported, her voice barely above a whisper. The bridge crew had watched their entire fleet disappear, ship by ship, until only their tiny vessel remained floating in a graveyard of empty space where an armada had once threatened to conquer a world. "Put it through," Rax replied, trying to keep the fear out of his voice. He had seen impossible things in the last few minutes, watched the laws of physics bend and break as the human ship moved through space like a ghost that could become solid at will. Whatever message the humans wanted to send, he would listen. The same calm voice that had warned Admiral Vex filled the bridge again, but now it carried a different tone. Where before there had been firm resolve and quiet determination, now there was something that sounded almost like regret. "Council Vessel Distant Echo. Thesis Captain Miller of the UHV Defiance. I am requesting permission to come alongside for direct communication. We have important information to share with the Galactic Council, and you appear to be the only surviving representatives of their fleet." Rax stared at the communication panel, hardly believing what he had just heard. The human captain wanted to talk, wanted to share information, rather than simply eliminate the last witness to his victory. After demonstrating the power to destroy entire fleets, the aliens were asking permission to approach rather than simply taking what they wanted. "Permission granted," Rax replied, though he knew his tiny ship had no power to refuse anything the humans might choose to do. "We will receive your representative." The Defiance moved toward them with the same impossible grace it had shown during the battle, appearing to glide through space without any visible means of propulsion. As it drew closer, Rax could see details of its construction that their long-range sensors had missed. The hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, its surface patterns changing as he watched. Whatever materials the humans used to build their ships, they were unlike anything in the Council databases. A small shuttle detached from a human vessel and approached their docking bay. Like its parent ship, the smaller craft moved in ways that defied conventional understanding of space travel, stopping and starting without the gradual acceleration curves that physics demanded. Rax watched it dock with his ship and wondered if he was about to meet the beings responsible for the greatest military defeat in galactic history. The airlock cycled, and a single human stepped onto his bridge. Rax had seen images of humans before, but meeting one in person was still a shock. They looked so ordinary, so unremarkable compared to the exotic species that made up the Galactic Council. Captain Miller appeared to be middle-aged by human standards, wearing a simple uniform that bore no resemblance to the elaborate military dress of Council officers. He could have been a merchant captain or a cargo hauler rather than the commander of the most powerful warship in the galaxy. "Commander Rax, I presume," Captain Miller said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I know the last few minutes have been difficult for you and your crew." Rax accepted the handshake, noting that the human's grip was firm but not threatening. "Captain Miller, I must ask why you spared our ship when you destroyed all the others. Are we to be prisoners or hostages?" "Neither," Miller replied with a slight smile. "You are here because someone needs to carry a message back to the Galactic Council, and because what happened today should never have been necessary. My government wants to establish peaceful relations with all species in this galaxy, but we needed to make it clear that humanity will not be conquered or controlled by anyone." The human captain gestured toward the main viewing screen, which showed the empty space where Admiral Vex's fleet had been annihilated. "Your council sent 800 warships to force a colony of farmers and miners to submit to alien rule. We responded with appropriate measures to defend our territory and our people. What you witnessed was not an attack, but a defensive action. Rax felt his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. Defensive action? You destroyed the largest fleet in galactic history in 4 minutes. Your ship moved through space in ways that violate every known law of physics. How can you call that defensive? Because we could have done much worse, Miller replied, his expression growing serious. The technology you witnessed today represents only a small fraction of humanity's current capabilities. We have been preparing for this encounter for decades, studying Council military doctrine and developing countermeasures for every weapon system and tactical approach in your databases. The human captain walked over to the tactical display and pointed to the sensor readings from the recent battle. Your ships fired approximately 40,000 energy weapons at the Defiance during the engagement. Every beam was recorded, analyzed, and neutralized by our defensive systems. Your missiles, particle cannons, and plasma weapons are all based on scientific principles that we mastered and moved beyond years ago. Rax stared at the display, seeing the battle from a completely different perspective. What had seemed like impossible technology was actually the result of scientific advancement so far beyond Council understanding that their weapons were simply obsolete. How long have you been watching us? Since first contact 50 years ago, Miller admitted, we knew that eventually the Council would demand our submission or attempt to conquer our worlds. Human history is full of encounters with aggressive neighbors who believe that might makes right. We decided long ago that we would. Never again be at the mercy of those who would enslave us. The implications of what the human was saying slowly sank into Rax's mind. While the Council had been dismissing humanity as a primitive species barely worth attention, the humans had been studying them, learning their weaknesses, and preparing for war. The greatest intelligence failure in galactic history had led directly to the greatest military disaster. But you said this was defensive, Rax protested. You eliminated our entire fleet. How many Council citizens died here today? Captain Miller's expression softened, and for the first time he looked genuinely sad. That is the part of this message I most wanted to share with your Council. We did not kill anyone today, Commander Rax. Not a single being died in this encounter. Impossible, Rax replied immediately. I watched ships disappear, entire crews vanishing without trace. The Eternal Dominion alone carried 50,000 personnel, who are all currently safe on uninhabited worlds throughout the sector, Miller explained. Our technology allows us to transport matter across vast distances instantaneously. When our ship passed through the position of your vessels, we relocated them to planets where they can be rescued by Council search teams. The crews are unharmed and will be returned to their families within days. Rax felt his legs give out and sank into a nearby chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. The humans had not only defeated the Council fleet, but had done so without killing anyone, somehow transporting thousands of ships and millions of crew members to safety while appearing to destroy them completely. The level of technological advancement such an action represented was beyond his ability to comprehend. Why? He managed to ask. Why go to such lengths to preserve life when you could have simply destroyed us all? Because that is who we are, Miller replied simply. Humans do not enjoy killing, Commander Rax. We fight when we must, but we prefer to find solutions that allow everyone to go home to their families. Your Council declared war on us by sending this fleet, but we chose to respond with mercy rather than vengeance. The human captain handed Rax a small data storage device. This contains the coordinates where your people can be found, along with detailed information about human territorial claims and our terms for peaceful coexistence. We are not interested in conquest or expansion beyond the worlds we already inhabit. We simply want to be left alone to live our lives as we choose. Miller turned toward the airlock, then paused and looked back at Rax. Tell your Council that humanity offers them a choice. They can accept us as equals and establish diplomatic relations based on mutual respect, or they can continue to view us as a threat to be eliminated. But they should understand that any future military action against human worlds will be met with responses that are far less gentle than what happened here today. The human captain left the bridge, returning to his shuttle and then to his impossible ship. The Defiance moved away from the distant echo and hung motionless in space for several minutes, as if giving Rax time to absorb everything he had learned. Then it simply vanished, disappearing without any energy signature or spatial distortion to mark its passage. Commander Rax sat alone on his bridge, holding the data device that contained proof of the most significant event in galactic history. In his hands lay evidence that would reshape the balance of power throughout known space, information that would force every species in the Council to reconsider their assumptions about strength, technology, and the nature of war itself. The humans had won more than a battle today. They had announced their arrival on the galactic stage in a way that no one would ever forget. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in 3,000 years of galactic government. Representatives from 47 different species filled the great assembly hall on the capital world of Nexus Prime, their voices raised in heated debate that echoed off the crystalline walls. At the center of the chaos stood Commander Rax, the sole surviving witness to the destruction of the greatest fleet in galactic history, holding a small data device that contained information capable of changing everything. Chancellor Crix called for order from his position on the central podium, his scaled hands gripping the speaker's staff with enough force to crack the ancient metal. The Valerian leader had ruled the Council for 20 years, guiding the galaxy through peaceful expansion and profitable trade agreements. He had never faced a crisis like this one, had never imagined that a single species could threaten the foundation of everything they had built. Commander Rax will now present his full report on the Haven Prime incident, Crix announced, his voice carrying across the vast chamber through translation systems that converted his words into dozens of alien languages simultaneously. The Council will hear all evidence before making decisions about our response to this human threat. Rax stepped forward to the witness platform, feeling the weight of thousands of alien eyes focused on him. In the 3 days since his return to Council space, he had told his story to intelligence officers, military analysts, and government officials. None of them had wanted to believe what he reported, but the evidence was impossible to ignore. Admiral Vex's entire fleet had vanished from Council territory, and their crews had been found exactly where the humans said they would be, alive and unharmed on uninhabited worlds throughout the Haven sector. Honored representatives, Rax began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to reveal. I must report that the human species possesses military technology far beyond anything in our current understanding. Their single vessel, the Defiance, eliminated 800 Council warships in approximately 4 minutes, using methods that appear to violate fundamental laws of physics. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly. The Corvin ambassador stood up from his section, his 4 arms gesturing dismissively. Commander, you are asking us to believe that one primitive human ship destroyed the most powerful fleet ever assembled. Surely there is some mistake in your report. There is no mistake, Rax replied firmly. I watched the human vessel pass through solid matter, ignore our most powerful weapons, and move at speeds that should be impossible in normal space. Their technology operates on principles that our scientists cannot explain, much less duplicate. He activated the holographic display system and began showing sensor recordings from the battle. The assembled representatives watched in growing horror as ship after ship disappeared upon contact with the human vessel. The footage was clear and undeniable, recorded from multiple angles by different instruments aboard the distant Echo. The human captain informed me that their ship relocated our vessels and crews to safety rather than destroying them. Rax continued. This has been confirmed by our rescue operations. Not a single Council citizen died in the encounter, despite the apparent destruction of their ships. The humans demonstrated both overwhelming power and remarkable mercy. The Vashien delegate buzzed angrily from her position near the front of the chamber. If they possess such capabilities, why have we not detected them before? How could a species we dismissed as primitive develop technology that makes our greatest achievements look like toys? Rax looked directly at her as he delivered the most disturbing part of his report. Because they have been watching us for 50 years, studying our technology and preparing countermeasures for every weapon system in our databases. The humans knew this confrontation was inevitable and spent decades getting ready for it. Silence fell over the assembly as the implications sank in. Every species in the Council had encountered human merchants and explorers over the past half-century, but none had suspected they were being systematically studied and evaluated as potential enemies. The greatest intelligence failure in galactic history had led directly to the greatest military defeat any of them could imagine. Chancellor Crix raised his hand for attention, his expression grim. "Commander Rax, did the humans make any demands or issue any ultimatums?" "They offered terms for a peaceful coexistence," Rax replied, holding up the data device Captain Miller had given him. "The humans claim territory in several dozen star systems that we had not yet explored, and they want recognition as a sovereign species with the right to self-governance. They stated clearly that they have no interest in conquest or expansion beyond the worlds they already inhabit." The Alterian War Minister rose from his seat, his voice filled with rage. "We cannot negotiate with terrorists who destroy our fleets and threaten our sovereignty. I propose immediate mobilization of all remaining Council forces for a full-scale assault on human territory." "With what ships?" the Corvin ambassador asked acidly. "The humans eliminated our entire strategic reserve in 4 minutes. Even if we conscripted every cargo vessel and patrol boat in Council space, we would still be outnumbered by their capabilities rather than their numbers." Arguments erupted across the chamber as different factions formed around competing responses to the human threat. The military representatives demanded immediate retaliation despite their obvious disadvantage. The diplomatic corps called for negotiation and peaceful resolution. The economic ministers worried about trade disruptions and resource shortages. The Outer Rim delegates began questioning whether Council protection was worth the cost if it could not actually protect them from advanced enemies. In the midst of the chaos, a new voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk. Ambassador Lane, the human representative who had arrived on Nexus Prime that morning, walked calmly through the assembly hall toward the central platform. She was a middle-aged woman wearing simple civilian clothes, looking completely unremarkable among the exotic alien species that surrounded her. "Honored Council members," Lane said, her voice carrying clearly without amplification, "I bring greetings from the United Human Government and an offer of permanent peace between our species." Chancellor Crick stared at the human ambassador, realizing that she had somehow bypassed all security measures and entered the most secure building in the galaxy without anyone noticing her arrival. "How did you get in here?" "This session is classified at the highest levels." The same way Captain Miller's ship reached Haven Prime undetected, Lane replied with a slight smile. "Humans have been living and working throughout Council space for decades. We know your security protocols, your communication codes, and your political structures better than you know them yourselves." The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. If humans have been operating covertly throughout the galaxy for years, then every assumption about their capabilities and intentions was wrong. They were not a primitive species stumbling into contact with advanced aliens, but a sophisticated civilization that had been studying the Council from within while preparing for eventual confrontation. Ambassador Lane activated her own holographic display, showing detailed star charts that marked human territorial claims throughout the galaxy. The maps revealed settlements and installations in hundreds of systems that the Council had never explored, suggesting a civilization far larger and more widespread than anyone had imagined. "We propose the following terms," Lane continued, her tone businesslike despite the magnitude of what she was offering. "Recognition of human sovereignty over the territories shown in these charts, establishment of formal diplomatic relations between our governments, and mutual non-aggression pacts that guarantee peaceful coexistence for both our species." "And if we refuse?" Chancellor Crix asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Then you will discover that the demonstration at Haven Prime was merely a gentle introduction to human defensive capabilities," Lane replied. "We prefer peace, but we are prepared for any alternative you might choose." The threat was delivered so calmly and matter-of-factly that it was more terrifying than any military boast could have been. The humans were not angry or aggressive. They were simply stating fact about the new reality that everyone would have to accept. Over the following hours, the Council split into 3 distinct factions. The hardliners demanded continued resistance despite the obvious utility of military action. The pragmatists called for immediate acceptance of human terms and establishment of diplomatic relations. The separatists began questioning whether the Council could continue to function if it could not protect its member species from external threats. By the end of the session, it was clear that the galaxy had entered a new age. The 3,000-year reign of the Galactic Council was ending, replaced by a more complex political structure that acknowledged humanity as an equal power rather than a subject species. Some worlds would choose to maintain their council membership while establishing separate treaties with humanity. Others would declare independence and seek direct alliance with humans. A few would attempt to remain neutral and trade with all sides. The balance of power had shifted permanently, not because humanity had conquered anyone, but because they had demonstrated the ability to defend themselves against any threat the galaxy could assemble. In showing mercy to their enemies and offering peace to their neighbors, the humans had achieved something the Council never could. They had earned respect rather than demanding submission. Commander Rax watched the assembly dissolve into smaller groups of arguing delegates and realized that he had witnessed the end of one era and the beginning of another. The galaxy would never again be united under a single government or ruled by the threat of overwhelming force. Instead, it would be shaped by species that had learned to coexist as equals, watched over by humans whose greatest strength lay not in their impossible technology, but in their willingness to use that power responsibly. The age of galactic empire was over, and the age of galactic cooperation had begun.